life now. Mother and father coyote will even go grocery shopping together because that increases their hunting success rate. And here's where they might just win you over. So a lot of their meal prep involves stealing from much bigger, much more dangerous animals like bears or wolves. So oftentimes it's actually the male coyote that'll go and scope out a possible bounty while the female waits off in the distance. If worse comes to worse and the male coyote gets relieved from life, the female coyote still has a chance to get away. And even though his kids have less of a chance of surviving without their father, it's better than the 0% it would have been if both parents got packed up. But the best dog father out there would probably be the golden jackal. While they're not the same, let's be honest, coyotes and jackals are like the metric system and whatever Americans use. If you call yourself an American, you probably call it a coyote. If you live literally anywhere else, it's probably a jackal. Coyotes and jackals pretty much have the same roles in society. And just like coyotes, golden jackals mate for life and the male will dig a den for a pregnant female, which he will defend with his life. Golden jackal couples also hunt together and they're 3 times more successful when they do. The father jackal is so devoted that if something ever happened to him, chances are his kids wouldn't pull through with just a single mother working alone. Coyotes are just as ride or die. Not only are they loyal partners, but female coyotes that don't have kids of their own during pupping season will often help their sisters or mothers raise their children. Coyote aunties are very much a thing, and it means a world of a difference to coyote pups. Speaking of kids, we gotta address the elephant in the room, and that elephant would be the coy wolf. It's exactly what it sounds like. You ever hear the expression F the ops? Yeah, wolves took that at its word. And like almost everything else, this one's on us too. Because while we're out here murking wolves like they owed us oil, the ones that did survive were low on options. And I guess if you squint hard enough at a coyote, it starts to look like a wolf. I like how out of context that sounded deep and profound, but really we're just talking about coyotes and wolves coexisting. To the point where the northeastern coyote is actually a hybrid that's 60% western coyote, 30% eastern wolf, and about 10% domestic dog, which I can't fully explain. The problem is coy wolves are bigger than the typical western coyote, while also not being as people shy as a typical wolf. One thing about coyotes, damn it, they're gonna find a way. But the question is, do coyotes deserve the hate? Again, your answer may depend on if you've ever had a pet that got turned into coyote poop. But in their defense, because honestly someone has to, coyotes don't usually see dogs as prey, usually just competition. And as afraid of them as some people are, coyotes have been responsible for human obituaries twice. Ever. Once in California, once in Canada. Squirrels and deer empty way more seats at family reunions, yet no one's out here declaring war on them. Also, there's a lot of myths surrounding coyotes. One of them is that they'll actively bait dogs to chase them so they can lead the dog into a pack of coyotes waiting to tear it apart. It's not true. And a lot like with wolves, coyotes are naturally afraid of people. It's when they start associating people with food that things can get bitey. Now, if you ask me how I feel about farmers flatlining coyotes to protect their livestock, I mean, what do you want them to do? I get it. But not to sound all PETA in the face about it, there's humane ways to do it. I literally watched a video of a guy setting his pit bull loose on a coyote and watching it slowly break his leg while the coyote cried in pain and all it was just recording. And that's where I'm like, damn, reincarnation really something, because Twain's still out here leaving his mark. I'm not asking you to like coyotes. I'm just saying anything with that much of a will to live, that little of a fire under a cautious kangaroo to give about anyone else. I mean, literally watched a video of a guy setting his pit bull loose on a coyote and watching it slowly break its leg while the coyote cried in pain and all it was just recording. And that's where I'm like, damn, reincarnation really something, because Twain's still out here leaving his mark. I'm not asking you to like coyotes. I'm just saying anything with that much of a will to live and that little of a fire under a cautious kangaroo to give about anyone else. I mean, at some point you gotta respect the game. Their entire existence is out of spite and a middle finger to everyone else. I mean, man survived 70 years of disrespect and a second Space Jam. That's gotta count for something. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this video, which you can probably tell I had a lot of fun with. For more consistent content, be sure to follow my TikTok.
By our very own Dungeons of Drakkenheim Mutagenic Masterpiece Bundle.
This bundle includes both the hard...
Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D and TTRPGs, including advice for players and guides for dungeon masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
In D&D, alignment is a fun way to consider the personality and role-playing of both player characters and non-player characters alike, and set up those cosmic conflicts that can define our game settings and adventures, and is also a wonderful and endless talking point when considering which of our favorite characters from books, movies, and TV shows, what alignment they might have.
And if your dungeon masters are anything like mine, they are all definitely characters as well. And so we're having a bit of fun today talking about the different alignments that we might associate with different types of dungeon masters.
So all the way from lawful good to chaotic evil, what does it mean when we frame alignment in terms of the way a dungeon master runs the game? Well, Kelly and I have come up with a little bit of a way to define the law versus chaos axis, and then we're going to talk about the 9 alignments and how they describe your dungeon master style as a fun thought experiment.
There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling. So in determining the axis of law versus chaos and good versus evil, how do we determine that in regards to dungeon masters preparing their games and running their games?
I think law versus chaos is actually super easy. I think that law tends towards respecting the rules and valuing what the rules do and what they accomplish, adhering to the rules, and also being maybe a little bit more organized and more prone to like game preparation. Whereas chaos is not really thinking the rules are that important or needing them, and perhaps having a more improvisational style.
Now, I don't necessarily think that one is better than the other in regards to this. You can be lawful in regards to being way too intense into the rules, and you can be chaotic in the sense that you aren't paying enough attention to the rules. But you can also be a chaotic DM who's really good at improv, or a lawful DM who knows how to use the rules. When we go to good versus evil, I actually think that we have a 3-tiered system, and it is the good, neutral, evil, which determines what is most important in the game to that DM. For good, I think that the players are the most important.
Yes, the players' enjoyment, the players having a really good time. For a good aligned dungeon master, that is paramount.
When we move on to neutral, I think that story takes the center stage here.
Yes, and the reason why I would say this is that sometimes a good story involves the players losing. And it means that a good and satisfying and rewarding story might not always be the most fun in the traditional sense, but it still has other rewarding ways. It's just like watching a horror movie is not fun, but you still enjoyed it.
And when we move on to evil, this is the dungeon master who puts themselves as the most important part of the game. It's all about their ego, their own satisfaction, and their own selfishness. They may completely disregard the fun that the players want to have at the table as long as they're having a great time.
So let's see what happens when we mix and match. And we'll start with the good and end up with the ugly. The lawful good dungeon master. This fellow runs a great game.
I think that we're going to codename this one the Director.
Okay.
And the Director, the lawful good dungeon master. The director likes to follow a module. They like what a module offers them. They like that the rules are there in place. A module offers them a structure to work off.
Yeah, I think that with the Lawful Good Dungeon Master, you're very likely to see someone who's going to use a published campaign setting and a fully published adventure campaign. But they're going to tend to pick the ones, I think, that favor the good versus evil narratives, the simple stories, maybe not the simple stories, but the ones where the players are the heroes.
It's your Star Wars instead of your Game of Thrones. Star Wars is like,
yeah.
you have light and dark. It's obvious the heroes are the heroes. The bad guys are the bad guys. There's not really room for gray area here.
Yeah.
Kill the bad guys, slay the monster, save the world.
Yeah, and I think the Lawful Good Dungeon Master likes the way the rules help the game run smoothly and fairly. They're generally going to make very fair rulings. They're going to be very consistent with the way they use those rules, but they're going to err on the side of the players whenever the rules and the players come into conflict. The one thing, though, that I think that you're going to run into with the Lawful Good DM is that they might be really in a hard place when the rules and the players' enjoyment butt heads with one another. And I think that this makes them, A, predictable, and B, I think a Lawful Good Dungeon Master struggles to challenge their players because they're afraid of killing their players.
I could see that. I could see that being lawful good, we're sticking to the rules, but we're also, because the lawful good Dungeon Master is so aware of the rules.
Yeah.
They also are knowledgeable about the rules that are going to impact in a negative way, and they avoid using those.
Yeah, but they're lawful good, so they don't like fudging the dice.
Yeah.
So I think for a Lawful Good Dungeon Master, the most terrifying thing is a death saving throw. They can't stand it because that's the moment where the rules say, you're at the whim of randomness. And for a Lawful Good DM, they're like, well, now it's a random die roll whether my players have a good time or not. And so I think Lawful Good DMs might even be hesitant to even knock their players down to 0 hit points. And so you're going to feel like you're always winning with a Lawful Good DM.
Yeah.
You're having a good time, but you're never going to lose.
Now, I do feel like there's some nuance in there, and I think I've probably played for a few lawful good DMs, and you can still have a great time with them.
Yeah, I think for some people that just want to relax, a Lawful Good DM is perfect.
It's a good way to learn how to play the game with a lawful good DM, and to just have a good time
I think
playing.
Lawful Good DMs are probably the best DMs for introducing D&D specifically to new players.
Now, when we move on to neutral good, codename here, the author.
Yes.
And I think the reason why it's the author, most authors who are telling stories are telling character-driven stories. I think that the neutral good DM here is my classic saying, you learn the rules so that you know how to break them properly. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is the neutral good DM. They have a very good understanding of the rules, how to use them to amplify their game, but also how to bend them in favor of the character journeys.
Yes, I think that the author, or perhaps maybe even they're the designer, I think that this Dungeon Master is very likely to create their own homebrew and believe in that strongly. And they might be the one that is they really like writing their own adventures, although they might use a published setting. They really like character-driven stories, where, again, the characters succeed and have those high adventures, but they might have a little bit more complexity to those stories than perhaps the Lawful Good Dungeon Master.
I also think that the neutral good, they may be a strong homebrewer, but they might also be what I'm going to call the scrapbooker, which is where you take a bunch of modules. Maybe you're running the Forgotten Realms, so you take a few of your adventures that are ran in the Forgotten Realms, take pieces out of them, and adapt them into your own thing.
I think the neutral good DM probably loves Eberron.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't?
I think the neutral good DM likes that setting because there's a lot of flexibility. The rules still have a structure there, but there's kind of a world that's got a complexity to it that the neutral good DM enjoys, but at the same time, they're still heroes. And the players are still going to be the ones that come out on top in the end. When we move to the chaotic good DM, I think we nickname this one the improv DM. And this is the definition of the yes and DM, right? Yeah. Where they're taking the input from their players, they're building on that. And I think that this DM might not prepare at all, but they're going to build on what their players are bringing to the table in order to create a really cool and fun time for everyone at the table.
The chaotic good DM is playing to find out what happens. They are possibly making loose notes on a scenario or a scene, and then they're saying, all right, players, go wild, and we'll figure it out as we go. Yeah. And there's a lot of skill involved in that, but not necessarily skill of understanding the rules. I still think a chaotic good DM, I think all DMs generally have a mild understanding of the rules. The chaotic DM just favors the rule of cool above the other rules.
Yeah, I think the chaotic good DM also might be inconsistent in their rules, because what they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, this is cool now, so it's going to work this way now because that's the coolest thing that could possibly happen, and that's the most fun thing that could possibly happen now. But the chaotic good DM might not necessarily be plotting ahead. So unlike their lawful good and neutral good counterparts, I think the chaotic good DM is not really thinking about what's going to happen in the future of their campaign. Yep. And so they might end up with a campaign that is a bit of a convoluted mess, that has a bit of a confusing story, and where sometimes the players get frustrated because the player's like, well, it worked that way last time, but this time, and because they're chaotic good, a player that said, well, it worked that way last time, the chaotic good DM can actually get suckered in by that because they want to err on the side of their players, and so they're going to break the rules for the player and then let the player kind of manipulate them in that way.
I do think that the best line for a chaotic good DM is, I'm going to let this fly this time.
Yeah.
And that is a line that chaotic good DMs that I might know have used to basically make the statement, I think this is awesome. I don't know if I'm going to think it's awesome if you do it again. And a chaotic good DM needs to be careful about that because you're chaotic and you like the rule of cool, and you're going in being like, oh yeah, you want to use this spell?